Hello, my name is Sydney. Welcome to or welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be talking about every single book I have read so far this year. So far, I've only read 10 books, which I am definitely a little bit behind on my reading goal for this year, but that's okay. We are still very early on in the year, so I have some time to catch up. I'm going to give you guys a brief overview of each book, what my thoughts were on the book, and what I rated the book. So let's just get into talking about all 10 books that I have read so far. The first book I finished this year was Reckless by Lauren Roberts. This is the second book in the Powerless series, so I can't really go too much into what this book is about, but I will say that this book just really felt like a filler book. I felt like there were a lot of things that were repeating. It was like literally the same exact situation, but a different font. I was expecting a lot more from this book. I still really did love getting to see Peyton and Kai and actually seeing them interact together in this book. But again, I just feel like we weren't getting anything, and that led me to giving this book a 3.5 stars. I really loved the first book in this series, but unfortunately this one just felt a little bit flat. The second book I read, I actually listened to on audiobook, and that was The Heiress by Rachel Hawkins. In this book, we are following the backstory of this lady named Ruby McTavish, and she is a very wealthy lady in North Carolina, and she has a crazy backstory. Pretty much when she was younger, she got kidnapped, and then ended up like found, and throughout her life, she had 4 husbands, and every single one of those husbands ended up dying. And there was just some weird unanswered things that happened throughout her life, and everything about her and this family was just super, super strange. She ended up leaving all of her money and this beautiful house called Ashby House to her adopted son, Cam, and he actually ends up wanting pretty much nothing to do with Ashby House and with this family, and he ends up getting married to this woman named Jules. And one day he gets told that somebody in the family actually ends up passing away, and he ends up going back to North Carolina to kind of just settle some things, and he did this more so because Jules wanted him to go. They are trying to figure out what happened in Ruby's life, why all 4 of her husbands died, what actually happened when she was kidnapped, and kind of just get to the bottom of why she even ended up adopting Cam in the first place. Well, this story was pretty interesting, and I liked the like rich and money aspect of the story. I just feel like it wasn't anything that wowed me or really stood out to me in the mystery and thriller genre. I ended up giving it a 3.5. I don't really think about this book honestly at all, and I feel like I could bump it down to a 3 stars. Overall, I probably wouldn't recommend this book if you are really into mystery and thrillers, just because this isn't going to be anything that is super revolutionary or amazing and could potentially be a 5 stars for you. The next book I read was Fearless by Lauren Roberts. This is the last book in the Powerless trilogy, and holy crap, you guys, I'm going to tell you all right now that if you have read books 1 and 2 and don't know if you want to continue the series, please continue this series, because this book definitely redeemed the whole trilogy for me. I just wish I could forget about a lot of the stuff that happened in Reckless and just have Fearless. I ended up rating this a 4.75, which I don't really like doing anything other than like 0.5 or just a straight rating. I just feel like it deserved better than 4.5, but it wasn't quite a 5 star. So that's just where we settled on. I really enjoyed being able to see Kit, Peyton, and Kai's real like raw emotions, feelings, thoughts throughout this whole book. I think that really, really made a difference for this book compared to the previous one. I will say though that if you have read this, you probably know what I'm talking about when I say this, but Kit really got on my nerves in this book. Like, I get it and I feel bad, but he just really annoyed me, and the things that he was doing, I just wanted to like shake him. Again, I can't really give you guys too much into what this book is about, but I will say definitely loved it way more than the second book in the series. The next book I finished was Alchemy of Secrets by Stephanie Garber. If you guys don't know, Stephanie Garber is one of my favorite authors. This was her first adult fantasy book, and she actually has two other series that are young adult fantasy, and that's Once Upon a Broken Heart and the Caraval trilogy. Both of those I absolutely loved. So when I saw that she was coming out with this, I knew I needed to pick it up. In this story, we are following our main character, Holland, and she is taking this class. It's called like Folklore 517, I'm pretty sure, and they are stuttering. And in the class, they are in this class, they are studying like folklore, myths, and legends. And this class is taught by a lady called the professor. And a lot of people just don't believe these stories and myths that this professor is teaching them. Holland just has a suspicion that these stories that the professor is telling the class are real. In the beginning of the book, we actually get to see Holland go and search for one of these myths, and the myth that she ends up finding to be real is this man called the Watchman, and pretty much if you talk to him, he is able to tell you when you're going to die. He ends up telling her that she is going to die the following night at midnight. The only thing she can do to save herself is find this magical object. So pretty much the rest of the book, we are following Holland in her journey to try and find this object so that she can save herself and so that she won't die the next night. This actually takes place in Los Angeles. I think having it set in Los Angeles just really gave it all of the fantasy vibes. I did feel like I never understood the true intentions of all of the characters that we met in this book, and I just feel like there was a lot of open-ended things that we didn't get like tied into a neat bow at the end of the book. I will say I feel like this book kind of missed the mark for me because I did really have high hopes for it because I love Stephanie Garber so much, and it just didn't meet the expectations I had set. I did end up giving it a 4 stars, which is not bad at all. I still did really enjoy the world, really enjoy the magic that we got to see. I just really hope that this ends up becoming a series. Overall, this was an okay book. It did let me down just a little bit, but I would definitely still recommend you guys pick this up. The next book I read was Heartless by Elsie Silver. This is the second book in the Chestnut Springs series, and this is following Cade Eaton and Willa, and this is a single dad nanny romance, and there's also an age gap. She is, I believe, 13 years younger than he is. Our female main character, Willa, ends up becoming a nanny for Cade's son because he is the owner of a ranch and he is trying to focus on, you know, doing whatever he needs to do on the ranch over the summer while his kid isn't in school. And he happens to end up getting Willa to be the nanny, even though he really just didn't want her to be. It kind of just ended up working out that way. Our male main character, Cade, is definitely very grumpy and broody and not really the most warmest person when you first meet him, or honestly really ever, but Willa really opens him up and we get to see like that more emotional side of him. I absolutely loved Willa's relationship with Cade's son in this book. It was so cute, it was so wholesome, and I just loved the little boy. I feel like sometimes in books, little kids can be written and be just like really weird and just not written how a kid actually acts in real life, but I feel like Cade's son was written very well and didn't make me like cringe. There were some parts where I was like, okay, this is a little bit cringy, but overall I did really enjoy it. I gave it a 4.5. This is also definitely very spicy, so keep that in mind. If you guys don't love spicy books, then this series probably isn't for you. I would definitely recommend you guys pick this up, especially if you have been thinking about starting the Chestnut Spring series. I will say I definitely did like this one way more than I liked the first one, which is Flawless. So definitely pick this up. Next up, we have The Last Time She Saw Him by Kate White, and this is a mystery thriller. In this story, we are following our main character, Kiki, and she is actually going to attend a dinner party that her ex-fiance is also going to be attending, and she hasn't seen him or spoke to him since they broke up. By the end of the night, her and her ex-fiance, Jamie, had a very quick, brief convo. Nothing crazy, nothing bad happened. But later on, everybody is leaving. There's only a few people left at this dinner party, and Jamie actually ends up leaving before Kiki. Kiki is getting ready to go, and all of a sudden, they hear this really loud noise, and everybody that's left at the party runs outside to go see what the heck happened, and they actually end up finding Jamie not alive anymore. And the police end up deciding that Jamie ended up taking his own life. And when Kiki hears that, she just knows that that is not right. And she just got this feeling that that is wrong and there is something suspicious going on. And so we're pretty much following Kiki trying to figure out what really happened to Jamie, and she ends up just like uncovering a bunch of these weird things. I gave this book a 3 stars because I feel like at the end, the ending just did not satisfy me at all. It honestly made me kind of mad. I had so many unanswered questions. Like, it's not even funny. There were so many things that happened throughout this book that we just brushed over, forgot about, didn't talk about. It really just confused me as to what the heck happened with a lot of the storylines. And I also was able to guess what happened at the end. So 3-star rating, nothing stood out to me. Would I recommend it? Probably not. The next book I read was my first and only 5 stars so far this year, and that was Promise Me Sunshine by Cara Bastone. Guys, this book was so good. I knew a lot of people really liked it. I just didn't know how much I was going to enjoy it. We are following our female main character, Lenny, who ends up losing her best friend to cancer, and she is having a really hard time with the grief that she is experiencing over this loss. Her best friend actually left her with this list. They called it a live again list for Lenny to go through and check off all of these things that will help her pretty much like live again, because she is telling her best friend before she ends up passing away that she doesn't know how she's going to be able to continue living without her by her side. In the beginning of the book, Lenny ends up landing a temporary babysitting gig for this single mom whose name is Reese, and she ends up meeting our male main character, Miles, on her first interaction with this family. And it was just not the best first impression for either one of them. Lenny is babysitting Miles' niece, and her name is Ainsley, and Miles pretty much is like hovering over them while Lenny is there because I guess he just like doesn't trust her. But we end up getting to see a little bit more into Miles and who he is as a person, and in the beginning I didn't know how much I was going to like him, but at the end I can tell you that I'm absolutely in love with this man and his personality. Even though Miles and Lenny didn't get off on the right foot, Miles is able to see that Lenny is really struggling with something, and he ends up talking to her and trying to strike a deal with her that he will help her check off these things that her best friend left her to do on this live again list if she will help him kind of get closer to his niece and his sister Reese, because he recently moved into the same building and he's trying to build that connection with them and actually have a relationship with his family. Later on in the story, we end up getting a little bit more context into Miles' background and we get to see that he is actually very, very acquainted with the feeling of grief, which is why he feels so strongly about helping Lenny get through this tough time. The things this man does for her, and how he literally, if he gets a call from her, he will drop everything. It does not matter what he is doing, where he is at, what time of day it is. He is always there for her. And I love how they started off like as strangers, and then we got to see the progression into their friendship, and then from their friendship, their actual like relationship in the romantic way. And guys, I loved the progression of their relationship. I love both of their characters so much individually. And this story, I'm getting chills thinking about it because it was so good. And if you guys haven't read this book yet, I feel like this is the perfect time of year to read it. And yes, there are some heavy topics that are covered in this book, so definitely check the trigger warnings if you think this might be something that could affect you. But I just really, really need everybody to read this book because it is so, so good. It is a work of art, literally no notes, 5 stars. I think about this book so much. Next up, we have Lightlark by Alex Astor. I actually listened to this book on audiobook, and this is the first book in a series. This book is about this magical island that appears every 100 years, and there are 6 realms, and the leaders of these realms have to go to the island of Lightlark and pretty much participate in this like trial or competition type thing. And in the end, they have to break these curses that have been set upon all of their realms. Every single realm has a curse that was crafted uniquely for their realm. So in order to break these curses, one of these leaders from these realms has to die. So we're following our main character, Isla, and trying to see if she is going to survive. There also is a little bit of a love triangle in the book. Nothing super romance heavy, honestly, like at all. That little bit that we did get, I was kind of like rooting for one person and then I would root for the other guy, then like switch back and forth, so I kind of liked that. But I will say this fantasy definitely didn't really stand out to me, hence why I gave it a 3.5. It wasn't horrible, but it also just wasn't my favorite, and I haven't really thought about it too much since finishing it. I did really like listening to it on audiobook just because I felt like I was able to like immerse myself in the world and actually understand what was going on a little bit better. But 3.5, not bad at all. I think this would be a good introduction into the fantasy world, and this is YA, so there's nothing super crazy. It's not any heavy world building, heavy on romance or anything like that. The next book we have is Sounds Like Love by Ashley Poston, and if you guys don't know, Ashley Poston is one of my all-time favorite authors. So this was the only book that I haven't read by her yet, and I was just so excited to pick this book up and dive back into another one of her magical stories. But I'm gonna be completely honest, this definitely was not my favorite. In this story, we are following our main character, Joni, who is a songwriter, and she actually finds herself in a very, very big slump, and she just has been lacking motivation and lacking inspiration to actually write a good song. And she decides to go back home to North Carolina, where her family actually owns a concert venue, which I thought was really, really cool. She ends up going back home to see if she can spark this inspiration and just connect with that part of herself. Shortly after she gets back home, she ends up realizing that there is something off and nothing seems right, nothing feels right. She's not getting all of the feelings that she wanted to being back home. One day, while she is back at home, she ends up hearing this melody that is unfinished and it has no lyrics. It's literally just this half-finished melody in her head. And then all of a sudden, she ends up hearing this man's voice, and her first thought is that she is going crazy because she is hearing some random voice in her head. And this is actually the little magical realism part that is in every single one of Ashley Poston's books, and that is one of the reasons why I love Ashley Poston so much, is because of all of the magical realism aspects that she puts into her books. She ends up realizing that this is not a fake person in her head and she is not going crazy. She ends up finding out that this is in fact a real man who is also hearing this melody in his head as well as her voice in his head. One day, this man shows up in North Carolina and shows up at the revelry, and she is very surprised at who this person is, but they end up coming up with the plan to finish this melody, give it lyrics, and finish the actual song to see if that will get them out of each other's heads. And we are following their story, their journey to coming up with a finished song. And honestly, I just really felt like this romance was rushed. I feel like they were not really emotionally connected as some of the other relationships that we've seen from Ashley Poston have been. So this was a little bit of a letdown for me. I did give it 4 stars just because I can't fathom giving anything else from Ashley Poston less than 4 stars. I just really missed that there wasn't that much of a build up to this romance. I just feel like we kind of were thrown into it and they didn't really have that emotional connection before they had this like more physical connection. And yeah, we did get to build that emotional connection, but still, I just feel like something was off, and if they were a real couple, I feel like it wouldn't last, but that's just my opinion. If you are somebody that enjoys music and has a deep connection with music, I think this is definitely a book that you would enjoy, and this was a pretty fast for me to get through. But again, it was just lacking in some departments where I think we could have done better, and 4 stars, not bad, but again, not my favorite. The last book I have finished up until literally this morning is Spark of the Everflame by Penn Cole, and this is the first book in a fantasy series. And I also listened to this one on audiobook. In this book, there are mortals and descendants are kind of like gods, or like the ones with like powers, and the mortals are obviously just regular humans. We are following our main character DM, who is a mortal, and she is just trying to like get out of this poor village she has been in her whole life, and her mom actually ends up disappearing in the beginning of the book, and she has literally no idea what happened to her. Neither does her dad, her brother, literally nobody in town knows what happened to her mom. So we are kind of following DM's journey into trying to find answers as to what happened to her mom, as well as what is going on in the world that they're living in. She ends up like getting acquainted with the king's heir, and obviously the king and his heir are descendants. This guy is like not treating her how he treats people, other mortals, and just other people that he comes in contact with, and that is something that she catches on to pretty early. He kind of like lets her get away with more things than he should, and you can just like see that he either might have feelings for her or he suspects something from her that maybe she might not be who she is claiming to be. But the end of this book really left me on a cliffhanger, and I really do want to pick up the next book in this series because I want to know what is going on. But I ended up giving this a 3.5. Nothing crazy or anything absolutely mind-blowing and amazing stood out to me about this book. This is definitely obviously an introduction to a fantasy series, but I will say she did make a lot of poor decisions and not really think through anything before she made decisions. So that kind of did annoy me about her. But 3.5, again, not bad, but not great. I think I'm going to continue this series, but we will see. Those were all 10 books that I have read so far this year. If you guys have read any of them, definitely let me know what your thoughts and ratings are in the comments. And if any of my reviews and ratings have inspired you guys to add any of these books to your TBR, definitely let me know. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to stay tuned for more videos from me, and happy reading!